Hello, and welcome to the W.A.I.T channel. What Am I Thinking? A podcast where two sisters share uplifting conversations on fun and sometimes serious topics.
Join us each week by clicking the notification bell and subscribing to our channel. If you enjoy the show, use the share link. It's one of the best ways to expand the conversation. Hello and welcome back to the W.A.I.T channel, What Am I Thinking? Today we're going to dive into the Bravo franchise Southern Charm. Not so much doing a recap, but narrowing in on two particular Southern gentlemen. And I use the word gentleman
Loosely.
very, very loosely. And I can't think of their last names. I'm terrible with last names. But we're going to talk about Shepard and Mr. Whitley.
Whitney,
right.
Mm-hmm.
Whitney.
Yes.
These bad boys, as Cameron so rightly labeled them, have wore on one of my nerves. And I know sometimes it's dangerous when you do a deep dive into people and their background and all of the tea that's out there. But I think for me, it helps me to not only understand past seasons, but individuals that had a bone. And at the time, I felt that they were unjustly going after someone or targeting. And then I put the pieces to the puzzle together, and I come to realize, wow, they were like dead on with the things that they were saying about these gentlemen. What do you think, Tracy?
So you reminded me of something that I had forgot, and once you reminded me of it, it made sense as to why these individuals were still even on the show. Whitney has not had a real relevant storyline.
No, he hasn't.
Probably since Catherine entanglement.
And purposely not showing up for reunions.
Correct. And so for the role of he and Patricia as executive producers, and I was like, aha, that's how they can linger and, entangle themselves in things because of that role. Because otherwise, I would say they're getting way too much camera time, to say what? Not a whole lot. So that made sense. And if we remember back to season 1, Whitney and Shep have done business. They've been business partners. They're not just friends. And so him being able to survive his scandals and still be on the show, here we go as to why. And even though she doesn't help herself at all, the way in which such a negative slant was put on Catherine and not so much on Ravenel, Thomas, because that's their boy.
As you were talking, I can't think of the young nurse's name.
Ashley.
And Ashley had said something on one of the episodes right before she left the show about Patricia and how Patricia had orchestrated some things. And when she was saying them, because of the way they produced the show, she was made to look like
crazy.
This. Yes.
Unhinged.
And I'm beginning to I really need to go back and
look at that.
To see.
Yeah. She didn't help herself.
No.
And so it was hard to legitimize the things she was saying. But so many things began to make sense as to why Catherine made the effort to get back into the good graces of Patricia. But then at some point, she obviously was like, I'm over it. I'm not, realizing you're not the only executive producer on this show.
Right.
And I know that I make good TV. And once they were able to see Thomas and all his flaws and not making him be like this, saint of a dad,
So if you don't quite see where we're going with this, I want to talk about one other young lady.
Okay.
Who left the show.
I know who you're going to say.
And now she comes back. And who is she supposedly involved with? And Whitney is saying we don't have to justify ourselves.
Yes, Miss Naomi.
Miss Naomi.
And so it's kind of, if you watch last week's episode, the timing, two things that stood out to me. In the prior week, Craig made it clear that he had zero interest in even really having a friendship with her, let alone a relationship. So whatever drama she thought she could stir up using Craig was gone. That night, she ends up hooking up with Whitney. And not only does she hook up with him, she broadcasted. If she had just told Leva, it would have been one thing.
She had to know.
But when you tell Austin, because his own best friend Craig is like, I can't tell you anything. You knew it was going to get out. So you were not trying to keep this a secret. You were not trying to protect Whitney at all. And then you guys go on this trip and Whitney is like, you can have this room or you can have that room, and being all nice and, Now
we also have to remember, and I think it was the season that they went to Colorado and they were infusing marijuana and everything. That was also the season that summer in which Whitney and Catherine
hooked up again. Right.
So she had that was when she had went out to California, I think, and she was trying to dry out and clean up, and then she comes back, to assure her place on the show. Maybe. I don't know. I just find it suspicious that these women who want to be cast or who are on the show, and you question, why are you on the show? Why are they? Is he so debonair that he has this suave that he can just attract?
No. That is a no.
So it leaves
I think part of why he probably is not in a lasting relationship is because he himself questions, why are you really with me? Is it for me or is it for what I can do for you, what I offer? And I think he's conflicted himself when it comes to making that commitment. And it's, Miss Patricia jokes about her marriages and how many times she's been married, but I think he really has, he could, if he's not sitting on somebody's couch or talking to somebody, he needs to be at his age to not have had a serious relationship. And I wonder if relationships are so transactional for him. And that's part of the problem. He opens himself up for that maybe. But I was really disappointed in Naomi to know Craig and Whitney are not close, but they are in a close enough friend group. The drama that surrounded Catherine and her entanglements with more than one guy within the group. And I think it's so funny that Craig was the one who initially wanted to get with Catherine, and unbeknownst to him, not only Shep broke the bro code, but so did, Whitney and Thomas. So, it's one of those things. And I think about young Catherine, 20 years old, and whether it was her desire to be part of this friend group, be on the show or whatever it was.
It has, in essence, ruined her life.
And I wouldn't say it's ruined her life, but it has made her grow up with more conflict and conflicted than probably she had to go through. So
aside from her children, which are those wonderful sweet things that came out of the mess. I would imagine that if you were to ask her, if you could tell the Catherine, the 20-year-old Catherine, what you know today,
Avoid
what would
Thomas Ravenel.
Yeah.
Avoid Whitney.
Yeah.
Really, probably.
So that's what I
avoid this
mean when I
friend
say
group.
they ruined, because the trajectory of her life probably would have been completely different. You know, if she did what most of, and I think it was Cameron that said most of the women from that class, they'll go to college, but they come back and they get married, and you know, they just get on boards and philanthropy.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably what she would have ended up doing. I don't know. But I do know where I see her today, unable to actually have relationships, still trying to figure herself out. When you're a parent, much of your effort and energy is supposed to be directed in raising your children. She didn't really finish growing up
herself. Yeah. I'm conflicted when it comes to her and
these older men.
Yeah.
The two that we're talking about today. Played a role. In her life, and I see Naomi I haven't quite really figured her out yet. I was happy that she, and the show, we're not really talking about her, but you know, since her name comes up, and I know the last month we did talk about her, and I was so cheering for her because I said she ate crow. Mm-hmm. But I see something diabolical behind her moves, that she very well knows exactly what she's doing.
I don't know if I would say diabolical. I would say probably more desperate. It seems more like a desperate move to me because I think she probably would have been better off not returning to the show.
I agree.
And she didn't need the show, but I think that after her relationship fell apart, she just was grasping for straws, and I think the show was sort of like a life raft for her. And because when she says, she was on Watch What Happens Live, and she said, no, I knew that Craig and I both knew that we were over. And she said, I think it was just more of a comfort thing running back to him. And I'm saying to myself, if Craig had been single, you guys, and still felt the way he felt about you, you surely would have, now, not to say it would have lasted, but you would have given it a go. I believe that, and I don't believe you're being honest with yourself to say that. I think you knew the ship had sailed with Craig yourself. So I want her to find her footing, and it's not with Whitney. It's not. And it's almost as if that's a dig back at Craig, because you know how sensitive of a person he is. But let's move off of Whitney and Naomi and move to Shepherd.
I think, and what I'm going to do is, I want you to tune in next week.
Oh, and we can do a part 2.
Yes, we're going to do a part 2.
Okay, I like
because
that.
I don't want to
rush it.
To rush away from Mr. Shepherd.
Because he needs a few more minutes than what we have left. So I agree. So think about the Whitney and Naomi little thing that's going on, and think about the motives behind both of them choosing to hook up. Think about that and continue to watch and listen.
And please leave your comments, especially if you got some good tea. See you next time.